ASAE's Diversity Executive Leadership Program. I'm a Delft Scholar, best class of 2008, 2009. And that really what propelled me to understand I wanted to be a change agent, and that I knew I could soar. I knew I belonged in those spaces when at times I was the only person of color in a space, in the room.
This is Associations Thrive, the podcast celebrating successful associations and their leaders. I'm your host, Joanna Pineda, CEO and Chief Troublemaker at Matrix Group International. Listen in as top association executives tell all, revealing the creative and innovative ways they're increasing membership, generating revenue, nurturing engagement, and reimagining their organizations. By the way, if you've launched a new initiative, created new member services, or updated your governance structure and are seeing great results, I want to hear your story, and so do my listeners. I'd love to have you as a guest. Go to podcast.matrixgroup.net and apply to be on Associations Thrive. Now let's dive into this week's show. Today, I'm speaking with Alison Heron, CEO of the Association of Child Life Professionals and the Child Life Certification Commission. Alison, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Joanna, for inviting me.
Alison, tell us about ACLP first.
So ACLP, the Association of Child Life Professionals, is dedicated to promoting the role of child life specialists. They're trained professionals who help children and their families cope with illness, injury, hospitalizations through play, education, and emotional support.
Alison, let's dive into this a little bit. What is a child life specialist?
A child life specialist, trained professional, they're mainly in hospital settings, and they're working with children that are having maybe a minor challenging event to a serious medical end-of-life challenging event. They work with really is the emotional support. So the crux of it is play therapy for child life professionals, but the emotional support, the education that they provide to the families and to the child, the affected child, is integral to the part of the healthcare fabric. So they are part of that healthcare, integrated healthcare team with social workers, the doctors, the nurses, rec therapy, occupational therapy. They're right there with them. So that's really the 360 view of how the hospital system is serving that child.
How are they different from psychologists, counselors, and social workers?
Yeah, so it seems as though it's a little intertwined some, but they mainly focus on really that emotional service. So they serve as an advocate at bedside. And I think that's a good distinction to say, is that they are bedside in the units, working with the hospitals and the medical doctors, nurses, and they're not social workers. So social workers looking after if the child has this insurance, the needs of the family, and that's child life specialists, that's not their role. As a psychologist, they use a little bit of all of that. You see, like they do a little social work or some psychology, but that's not their lane. Their lane are trained professionals really focusing on the emotional support for the children and the families that they serve.
And it sounds like one distinction is that they're at bedside, which means they're working directly with the children and probably spending more time with them.
Spending more time with the children in all facets, let's say this, all facets of being in a hospital and or community-based settings. So bedside, meaning they're going for an x-ray, needles, they're in the emergency rooms, they're in the operating rooms, right? So it's just not one placement that child life specialists are.
Well, we're going to spend a lot more time talking about ACLP, but let's turn to your other hat. Because you recently had a title change. You're now CEO of ACLP and the Child Life Certification Commission. So tell us about CLCC.
CLCC, they're focused on the Certified Child Life Specialist credential. So the primary focus for CLCC is the integrity and sustainability of the credential. So that is their focus. And I just want to share some great news, if I can, that the Child Life credential, we recently earned the NCCA accreditation. So we are now a accredited credential, the same as ASAE, CAE, the Certified Association of Executive. We're accredited by that same body.
Wow, congratulations. Was that a big lift to get that accreditation?
That was a big lift. I'll share that it was on our strategic plan prior to me joining the association 3 years ago. And for me, I'm determined. The strategic plan is a guiding post in how we move forward to the future of our organization. And we started the journey, and we did have a consultant help us. And we ran into some hiccups, I'll say. It was an arduous journey. We lost a critical staff person that was handling this part. However, myself and my COO took that fight on ourselves. Like, we took that extra work on ourselves because we did not feel it was fair to try to parcel it out to our other staff members.
I see.
So we just took on that role. We worked diligently from January, and we finally submitted our application with help in April, end of April. And we just received our notification last Monday, on Monday, September 25th, that we were 5 years fully accredited.
Wow, that's amazing.
Extremely proud, but we had a lot of our volunteer leaders, committee members, ACLP staff that helped us along this way. So while we were the conduit to filling out paperwork and answering questions and that, but we could not have done that without the support of the volunteer committee leaders and our staff.
Alison, why was it important to get that accreditation?
It's important because along in our allied health world, we had the Art Therapy Association, so their Music Therapy Association, Occupational Therapy, and their accredited programs. It shows the value. It shows the rigor that our certification in the highest gold standard.
I see.
That our certification, our credential has to meet. Because we have the accreditation, is now for our child life professionals, our certified child life professionals, to really see the value. We want the employers, the hospital systems, community-based systems, whoever is employing our child life specialists, certified child life specialists, to understand and value their work, their training, their education. That is why it's important.
What I'm taking away from just this short time is that if I ever have a child going into a healthcare setting, a hospital setting in particular, I should ask if there's a child life specialist and if they're certified child life specialists, because that's potentially going to make a big difference in their care.
And makes a difference in their care. And I don't want to take away from that. We do have child life specialists. They're serving in the hospital systems as well. However, our certified child life specialists have went through the additional training, has went through the regular and additional education and learning, and they're keeping up with the trajectory and the moving spaces and everything that's happening within healthcare. So they're keeping up with their continuing education. So yes, making sure that you have a child life specialist when you're walking the door, advocate for one. If it's not automatically presented to you, ensure that you advocate for one, because they are going to be there to help support your child during scary situations, difficult times when it's time to explain why you must have an MRI or X-ray or get a needle or you're going to surgery. Then they can help the family cope as well with what's going on, what are the next steps, and they can really ask the questions that they're maybe a little hesitant to ask a doctor or a nurse.
Wow. Well, we got a lot to talk about, but first, let's turn to your journey. Alison, how'd you get to become CEO of ACLP and CLCC?
I'll try to sum it up really quickly, but I have been in associations for 30 years now. I started off as administrative assistant in a 1.5 person office. And I will say within about 5 years, and I have moved to a few other positions, this was my career. I wanted to be an association professional. And I just took the journey. I also was, hey, I wanted to be a CEO. I wanted that corner office.
Yeah.
And that was early on in my career. That's what I wanted to be. There was often times within the arc of the career, I decided that's okay. I don't want to be a CEO anymore. I see what's going on. I don't want that responsibilities. But eventually I became a manager, director. I had so much support along the way. I will say that ASAE's Diversity Executive Leadership Program, I'm a Delft Scholar, best class of 2008, 2009.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. And that really what propelled me to understand I wanted to be a change agent. And that I knew I could soar. I knew I belonged in those spaces when at times I was the only person of color in a space, in the room. So that was when I really decided, yes, again, I wanted to be a CEO. And in 2021, I didn't realize the position was out and open. However, I was contacted. Because I know I try to pass it on to someone else. And they were like, why are you not applying for this position?
Oh, and who asked you this?
Stephanie Reeves and Mariama Boney. And those are my rocks. And they're also part of my Delft class of 2009. And they were already serving in leadership roles, right? They've been a CEO or they were a CEO. So I just figured I'm a senior director, so let me give it to them because they're more aligned. And both of them, I made a promise that I would apply for the position. And as they say, the rest is history for right now. So I thank them for pushing me out of my comfort zone.
Alison, I had Eduardo Arabu on a couple weeks ago, and he talked about the importance of having a personal board of directors.
Absolutely.
It sounds like those two are on your personal board, and they've been really instrumental in your journey and development.
They have been, and others as well. So we have our own personal board of directors who we call our names BBI. And we also have another group. We're also a subset of a larger group. So that's our code name is we say BBI, and when we hear it, we know what it is.
I love that.
So it's a group of us who, and I'm just going to acknowledge them now as part of BBI, Artisha Moore.
Oh, yes.
Aaliyah Horton.
Yep.
Denise Weathers. And as I stated, Stephanie Reeves and Mariama Boney, my core group of personal board of directors. I have an extension of those board of directors that family, friends, right? So you have your networks, Sean Boynes, Irving Washington, Juan Amador, Dante, thank you so much.
Yeah.
They have been instrumental in pushing me out of my comfort zone.
Well, it sounds like these are people who you respect. So when they say you should do something, you pay attention. Instead of blowing it off and saying, that's not for me. Somehow they see it in you, so you need to give it some thought.
Correct. Because they see it in me, and I have to know if someone is saying something to you, then you have to also want it and see it in yourself. And I know I can't do it.
Yep.
I just have to get out my own way. And they're pushing me forward to get out of my own way.
Wow. Love that. Hey, let's turn to ACLP. How's membership?
So membership right now is a little down. I will say membership right now is somewhat down. And we're probably down about 5 to 6%. And we're doing things to right the ship.
Do you know why membership is down?
Yeah, it's due to many factors. I'm glad you asked that. It's because burnout. So there's a staffing shortage among child life specialists, but it's not just child life specialists in healthcare as well.
Right.
So the staffing shortage is increasing the burnout. Compensation, not having adequate compensation for child life specialists that's taking on more roles due to the staffing shortage. So individuals are leaving the profession. And I've had some individuals say, I just need to take a mental break for a year or two. Remember, child life specialists were bedside during COVID.
Right.
They were essential when families couldn't be with their children, or if it was just one parent at a time, they were bedside. They were there to support them. So it's a ripple effect of that we're seeing. But we do have child life professionals, again, coming back after a break. They just needed to take care of themselves and have that break. But we're always fighting to make the value known of how invaluable they are in the healthcare world for better compensation, better benefits, to making sure that we're staffing up. So there's not that continuous burnout that's happening and mental stress.
So, Alison, how do you do that? How do you advocate to the healthcare institutions on behalf of your members so that the burnout is lessened, so that they're better compensated, but also so that they're maybe appreciated a little bit more?
Yeah, so with that, we actually work with our committees, of course, our volunteer committees, because they are the leaders in the hospital. So we're here to provide them suggestions, recommendations, really understanding the value. We introduce clinical ladders, which is a clinical ladder within the hospital setting of, at Child Life Specialist 1, these are the responsibilities and the roles, and it can go up to 2, 3, 4, or 5. And that's added onto their benefits as well as their compensation. So we're asking for adoption for that. With Child Life Specialists, they need clinical experiences, and that can come in the form of internship or employment. So with internships or employment, they still have to be overseen by a certified child life specialist that has the necessarily experience. But if you have a shortage in staff, then you're having a shortage in clinical experiences.
I see.
And internship possibilities. So with ACLP, our role is a continuing education. How can we get in front of hospital leaders, hospital administrators? But we're starting with our child life leaders, those who are program directors, teaching them how to make a case, how to speak business when you're making a case with your HR, with the CFO of why you need another FTE. So that is our role, as we cannot control with such a large institution as hospitals. We can't control their compensation or benefits, but what we can do is arm our professionals with the tools that they need and the resources they need to then have that conversation.
And what does that look like? Arming the members with the information. Is it a toolkit? Is it training? What is it?
All of it. It's toolkit, it's training. We do mentorship. We have a mentor program. We have a Child Life Leaders Conference where leaders can come together and discuss what's going on. It's data. We have a Child Life Professional Data Center, because data, you have to be able to tell your story with numbers. So we need to have valid data. So all of that's important when you're discussing the business of child life to HR, to your CFO. And so we're arming them with all that we can. We have specialized committees specifically looking at resources for child life leaders at all stages within their leadership profession.
Well, let's turn to something different. So your certification used to be part of the organization, and then you split it. So why did you split it and create a separate commission, a separate organization?
Yeah, so as many in association leaders, is going to boil it down to this acronym, UBIT. Unrelated Business Income Tax.
Yep.
Part of the certification program, while thriving and doing well, was creating an exorbitant amount of taxes and tax penalties that we had to pay for the association. So at the recommendation of our auditors, as well as our accountant, it was decided that it's best, because if you have this 501c6 certification program, they're not going to experience UBIT, because that's what their organization is meant, is for certification.
Oh, I see. The separate organization is devoted to the certification, so it's not unrelated business income.
Correct. Because it's related, because that's their business. ACLP being the 501c3, focusing on continuing education and resources.
Community membership, exactly.
There we go.
Okay.
So we no longer have the UBIT to have those unrelated income taxes we were facing. So that's the absolute main reason why we did the split. However, we still share staff. As we stated before, I'm the shared CEO, but I do manage the ACLP board. I manage the commission board and their functions and duties. as well as we do have shared staff. So we have a certification team of 3.
Wow. Okay. Really, really interesting. I'd never thought of that. You have something on your website called the Emotional Safety Initiative. What is that?
So the Emotional Safety Initiative, it's really like a movement that ACLP is trying to bring forward into and have it embedded as part of different hospital institutions as well as community-based, and is focusing on 4 pillars that we have. So the 4 pillars and it's a strategic framework of the pillars that we have is screening and assessment, intervention, environment, education, training, and communication. So with the initiative and that type of training, it's almost like a train the trainer. So while there may not be a child life specialist, let's say in a smaller community-based hospital setting, but if we can train a medical technician, nurse, nursing assistant, that when they encounter children that's having challenging times during their stay or during their visit, here's some ways. Right. So we're imparting training that child life specialist does. We're imparting some of that training to others who are non-child life specialists. Is helping them to understand some coping mechanisms. Here's different ways to de-stress, right? You want to de-escalate. And what are some of the ways you can de-escalate in a situation?
So what I'm hearing is emotional safety in general, you want to expand.
Yes.
Across the entire hospital and maybe give other people who are not necessarily dedicated child life specialists with some of the skills and training so that they can either provide that function or support that function.
Yes, 100% correct. Because the more they know of what we're doing, right, is beyond play therapy or just an emotional support. We're using tools and techniques to de-escalate, to de-stress the situation with the child and their families. So that is our mission. That's our goal. That's the profession. And they do that with empathy. They do that using vast communication skills. They're doing that with humility as well. So it's a very strong and resilient profession, one that I admire, and that I've told them I don't think I would be capable to do that, because being empathetic to where I know I'll probably cry, and you can't do that, right? So you can be able to cry and sharing the emotions. You have to do that on site, but that tears at my heartstrings when I have visited Wings, which was a NICU, right? So it's neonatal ICU, or you're visiting where this is cancer. So here's where they're sitting for their cancer treatments, and just visiting the different settings, you really appreciate and recognize the importance of the profession, but how strong and resilient in the midst of burnout.
Yeah.
In the midst of post-COVID, or them going through COVID and having COVID a number of times themselves, and the coping strategies that they have to even take within themselves to deal with something that's daily.
Yeah. Well, your members are mostly in hospital settings. Are there other settings where they should be?
I would love to see our members in the profession expand out. Think about dentists and dentistry, how even as grown adults, where we have some fear or reservations when we have to get our teeth cleaned, or we have to have a procedure with that. Well, imagine a child with the tools, the loud tools, and
lots of needles.
With the needles, I would love to see them in classrooms, right? Classrooms, especially with our special education teachers and what they're having coping strategies with that. Imagine if they had a child life specialist in a special needs classroom, how much that can help the special education teacher. I would love to see them in court, family court, and they have to be a part of when they're going, family is separating, or the transition is so much. Being in foster care, what does that mean emotionally? And where's the support that that child life specialist is getting beyond the work of a social worker for placement?
All right. So listeners, listen to what Alison is saying. If you're with an organization in any of these settings, get in touch with Alison. I'll put a link in the show notes. And then Alison, you're going to have to figure out how to get a bunch more people trained up to be child life specialists.
we are ready. We are ready, willing, and able to do so.
Well, let me turn to my final question to you. It's 2024. Why should somebody today become a child life specialist?
If you have the capacity and willingness to give more of yourself unselfishly, and you know there's a need, the need is the children, the need of their families, and you want to give that, and you can support, and you're here to support no matter what, and stand to be an advocate for our children, for any race, creed, gender, identity, community, then we want you to become a child life specialist. That's what we want. That's who we're looking for. And again, is a strong, strengthened profession. We may be small, but we are mighty. The profession is still young in association world, speak of being a little over 40 years old, but we're here. I don't see us going anywhere. And it's such a profession that at times can feel unseen, unheard, and overlooked, but they are so valuable. They're so valuable. So I would love to make connections with anyone who wants to learn more about our organization. Please ask everyone to visit our website or call us. We'll be more than happy to tell you how you can become a child life specialist.
Alison, this was a terrific interview. I want to thank you for sharing everything that you have. Listeners, please reach out to Alison, have her speak at your conference, talk to her about some joint training, and let's get these child life specialists in more settings because it sounds like they would benefit our kids.
Thank you so much, Joanna. I really appreciate that.
Thanks for listening to Associations Thrive. We're so glad to have you here. You know, my personal mission and the mission of my company, Matrix Group International, is to help associations and nonprofits increase membership, generate revenue, and thrive in the digital space. I want to hear stories of how your organization is thriving in today's challenging landscape. Please apply to be on my show by going to podcast.matrixgroup.net. By the way, do you need help with a digital initiative? Maybe it's a website redesign, a new membership database, or a hybrid meeting that you're planning. I'd love to connect with you. Please visit the Matrix Group website at matrixgroup.net. Thanks again for listening to this week's episode of Associations Thrive. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, leave a 5-star rating, post a comment, and share it with your colleagues and friends. Bye!